Good morning, everybody. Happy Thursday to you. It's Thursday, right? We didn't have church last night on Wednesday, so I don't know what day it is. It's Thursday. I had my long run today, so it must be Thursday. Good morning to you. My name is Tim Harris. It's 10 o'clock. It's time for 10 with Tim. We are finishing up the Gospel of Mark. Literally, maybe we'll talk about that. Gospel of Mark. The ending of the Gospel of Mark is complicated, but the story of the resurrection is beautiful, and that's what we have today. So on this Monday, Thursday, the Thursday before Easter, let's talk about the resurrection from Mark chapter 16. He begins Saturday evening when the Sabbath ended. Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and Salome went out and purchased burial spices so they could anoint Jesus' body. This is history. It's not just a Bible story that you were taught in Sunday school. And Mark wants to anchor these events in the flow of human history, And so he gives the details. Saturday evening, when the Sabbath ended, he tells who went. It was the same three women that we saw at the foot of the cross: Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James, and then Salome, probably the wife of Zebedee. And so those three women go to purchase spices. They wait till Saturday night because if you know how the Jewish Sabbath works, it's sundown Friday till sundown Saturday. And so, like in the old days when they close all the shops on Sunday, in the United States, because we're, predominantly Christian. Of course, in Israel, it's Jewish, and so the Sabbath, everything closes down for Sabbath, but Sabbath is Friday night to Saturday night. So the shops would open back up on Saturday night. It sounds a little weird, but that's how it would work. So that's why they would wait till the Sabbath is over, the shops would reopen, and they could buy what they needed on Saturday night. I know that for us, this is the Easter story, and we've seen this acted out in Easter pageants most of our lives. Some of us, or you've watched movies on TV, you saw the Passion of the Christ, or you've been watching The Chosen. And so it's hard for us to just realize how these women are just going about life. When there is a death, as terrible as it is, there are just certain things that have to be done, and they are not always easy jobs. And let's just be honest, most of those jobs fall to women, And so these women are going to care for Jesus's body. It's just normal. It's what they would do. There's probably some extra devotion here because of the interruption of the Sabbath. This body has now just been in the tomb, for what they assume would be nearly 3 days. That's a long time for a dead body in Mediterranean climate, and so they should be bracing themselves for what's going to be a really difficult kind of job, something not everybody could even do. I don't know how many of you have ever just been in the presence of a dead body. I don't mean one in the funeral home that's got makeup and under pink lights. I just mean a dead body, that is not easy. And this is what these women are prepared to do. Now, that's not how the story turns out. You know that, but they don't know that. And on the way there, they're just trying to figure out how are we going to get the stone? Like they understand because they saw. These women saw Joseph put the body in the tomb. And that detail is there so that you don't come away thinking, well, maybe they went to the wrong tomb, We'll talk about that in a second. They saw Joseph put the body in the tomb, most likely Joseph's own tomb, his own family tomb. These, burial caves that you find in Palestine, they're typically belonging to families or clans. They would be very expensive. Not everybody has something like this, and the fact that this is a tomb with a rolling stone door, even that wasn't very common. And indeed, they were most common during Jesus's time. So all of this would be historically accurate. But not everybody had that. It's not like you just go to a cemetery and there's all these rolling stones. That's actually quite a luxury, but also a problem for these women. The stone itself would probably roll down and it settle into a groove like a channel dug at the door. And so you could push it in easier than you could push it out. And of course, that's by design. You don't want it to be easy to open for grave robbers and everything else. But at any rate, these women don't have any real idea how they're going to deal with that big giant stone before the door. But as they arrive, they look up and they see the stone's already gone, already rolled away. And that in itself is alarming to them because it's not what they expect. They don't expect that at all. They saw Joseph roll the stone in front of the entrance. And so now they know that something's different, something's changed since they were last there. And so, again, it's alarming to them. They enter the tomb. They would go through the door, and then there are actually two chambers. They would have to go crawl through another very small opening into the like the antechamber, the actual burial chamber. And it mentions that there's a young man sitting in a white robe on the right side. It just, again, the right side, that's a detail. That's just an eyewitness detail. And I love that, obviously Mark, but the early church preserved these things. The women would have said, he was on the right side. It's just the details that you'd only know if you were there. Mark isn't really clear that this is an angel. He just says a young man in a white robe. It could be a young man in a white robe, but because he has divine information, we know that he is a messenger from God, an angel. The word angel just means messenger. So whenever, God sends a divine being with a message, that's an angel. It's just angelos is a messenger. And it's the fact that he has this divine information, and the divine information is critical. It's critical. I know that everybody's favorite Easter hymn is Because He Lives. I love Because He Lives, but I also am fully aware that that verse that says, an empty grave is there to prove my Savior lives. That's not exactly accurate, because throughout the Gospels, the empty grave doesn't prove anything. The empty tomb doesn't prove anything. The only thing the empty grave does is raise the question, what happened to the body? And honestly, when the women find the stone rolled away, and at first, they encounter the man. I mean, the empty tomb doesn't preach the gospel. It's just something that demands an answer, an explanation. What happened to the body? And it is the messenger that has that information. Don't be alarmed. You're looking for Jesus of Nazareth who was crucified. He isn't here. He is risen from the dead. You see, that's vital information that wouldn't be available without the divine messenger. So not just in the Gospel of Mark, in the gospel story itself, we need this divine messenger to explain what's happened. Otherwise, we'd never know what happened. And it would be up for grabs, up for explanation. And people have always tried to explain it away. Like I said earlier, maybe the women went to the wrong tomb, they say. Or maybe Jesus, they just thought he was dead, but he just really passed out. And then when he got in the cool tomb, he sort of revived and went out, and started a new life, out west. I mean, people just come up with all kinds of stories like that. The story that the religious leaders and the Romans spread was, well, his disciples stole the body. You see what I'm saying? The empty tomb doesn't prove anything. It just raises the question, what happened to the body? And it's the angel who has the answer to the question, what happened to the body? He is not here. He is risen from the dead. He is gone before you. And I tell his disciples, including Peter, he'll meet you in Galilee, just like he said. What was it? Chapter 14, verse 28, when Jesus said, Son of Man, he's going to be, he's going to be crucified, but in 3 days, I will rise again and I will meet you in Galilee. I mean, he says that. It says that in I think it's chapter 14. And so the angel's just reminding him, this is what he said would happen. And he'll meet you where he said he'd meet you. He's gone before you in Galilee. Go see him, I just love that. Jesus did what he said he would do, and it's, again, for us, it's like, how did they never understand it? But that's the whole point. These events are beyond human comprehension. I mean, you and I have been raised on the gospel. The gospel was normal to us before we were old enough to even understand what we were being told, for many of us. And so, we just accept it, but even at the end of the passage here today, verse 8, the women fled from the tomb, trembling and bewildered, and they said nothing to anyone because they were too frightened. It's just this mixture of astonishment and terror. I mean, the words that Mark uses here are horror, terror. I mean, they are so afraid. Again, realizing in Jewish religion and Jewish tradition, the resurrection, comes on Judgment Day. They probably assume it's the end of the world. If you've got somebody risen from the dead, the resurrection has begun, and now the world is ending. I mean, they wouldn't know what happens next, because once this happens, it seems like all of the laws of what's normal have now, come unglued, and so they are terrified and silent for a while. Again, there are those who say, yeah, it's a made up story. The disciples made this story up just to keep the movement going, No, no, this isn't the kind of story you just make up. And one of the great evidences of that for me is the fact that by every account, the witnesses to the resurrection are women. Just remember that women weren't even permissible as witnesses in Jewish courts of law. They did not consider a woman's testimony reliable in any way, because you know how women are. I mean, that was the thinking. And so the fact that the most important, and literally this is the most important aspect of the gospel. If there's no resurrection, there's nothing else. I got nothing to preach if this isn't true. I got nothing to preach if this isn't true. And so the fact that everything rides upon this story, this, right here, this event, and yet it relies upon these women, who when they leave for a while, they're just too frightened and bewildered. I mean, it's like, what? That is either so preposterous or, my goodness, that's the truest thing I've ever heard. If you were making up a story, you'd do better than this. You'd have celebrity endorsement. You'd have letters of references. You'd have Oprah, saying that she knew it was true. I mean, you would not just have three women, two of them named Mary. I mean, come on. That's not at all the way you'd make a story up in the ancient world. This is what it is. It is the eyewitness to the greatest moment in heaven and earth, the resurrection of the Son of God. And the women leave the tomb trembling, frightened. They don't even know what to do. It's reminiscent of Peter on the Mount of Transfiguration, he just doesn't know what to say. These women don't know what to do for a while. Now, we'll come back tomorrow, because isn't this interesting? I assume you've looked at the end of the Gospel of Mark now. That's the end of the Gospel of Mark. It just ends right there. Apparently, except there's another ending and then another ending, and we'll come back to that tomorrow. What's up with the ending of the Gospel of Mark? Where does it end? What is the ending? And how we're supposed to make sense of this. So we'll pick up tomorrow with those last verses of the Gospel of Mark. Mark chapter 16, verses 9 to 20. It'll be tomorrow. It'll be Good Friday. And I can't wait to do this with you. I love you guys so much. Maundy Thursday, the word Maundy is a Latin word that comes from commandment, which is reminiscent of Jesus at the Last Supper when he says, "A new commandment I give unto you, that you love one another." So it's Maundy, it's Commandment Thursday, and that commandment is a commandment to love as Jesus loves. So today when I tell you I love you, I mean I love you with all my heart, and I pray that every day I'm learning to love more and more like Jesus. Anyway, happy Maundy Thursday to you. I'll see you tomorrow, Good Friday, Lord willing, 10 o'clock for 10 with Tim. I love you guys.